This is OBS, by the way. It's an open source video recorder. I like it because most of the video recorders online that you download are set up for gamers, right? So they have a big window where you have your face there, and then they have the game, where you view the game in the background and all sorts of metrics and stuff, and that's not really what I want. So this one is a lot simpler. Just records the screen, or I can turn it on myself if I really want to. I don't like to see myself in the videos. So.
What is it called?
OBS. What is the name of? I'm trying to remember what it's. Something Studio. OBS. It just says OBS. Object something Studio. One of my students actually told me about it because I was complaining that all the things I was looking at were gaming, and YouTube has taken away your ability to record directly from YouTube. You have to record it with the second party and then upload it to YouTube. So, okay, so we've started a new one. I'm going to talk a little bit about programming. So basically this is a little command, right? This is a command. We're telling it what to print. It's a little bit of a built-in function too. So we've got print, we've got comma, parentheses. This is what we're going to print, whatever is in there. Now you could do other things, like if I wanted to say, I'm going to do name, and I'm just going to do it as I could do like name equal Steve. And again, double quotes or single quotes are the same. Does anybody have an idea what I've done there?
You gave it a definition to store.
Yeah, I've created a variable, right? I just called it name. A variable is something that stores a value. And I've assigned, this equal sign doesn't mean that the two things are equal, but it's assigning a value. It's assigning the character Steve to this variable name. Does that make sense? Now, I could say print, name, and it prints Steve, right? So I've assigned a value to this variable, and now I can use that variable instead of these letters. And you can change them along the way. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Why did you not have to use quotations?
Because this is a variable. It's not a string, not a list of
Okay.
characters. Couple of things if you've done other languages. Things that initially drove me nuts. I don't have to say what kind of thing this character is. It figures it out by what's assigned to it. Right, so it's a character thing. If I did, so I'm going to say number equals, anybody have a favorite number?
7.
Okay, 7. And I could do print number. Now notice, that needs parentheses. And that won't work because I spelled number wrong, right? So one of the things I want to say, this gives you a little bit of troubleshooting. Troubleshooting means that there's an error here. And the error is it doesn't know what numer is, right? If I fix that, I mean, I can fix it by what?
Let's do Alt P.
What?
Alt P.
Well, or I could just do print number.
Well, because, we're lazy.
And then it prints 7. So a couple of things about this. This isn't in quotes, right? And the reason why it's not in quotes is you don't quote numbers, you only quote characters. It figures out what kind of variable it is based on the value that's assigned to it. This is called loosely typed programming. If you're in Java, you would never get away with this, right? You would have to say, when you declare number, you would have to say that it is an integer. right? It wouldn't allow you to just associate those things. In this one, you'd have to say it's a string. String being a list of characters. So this is one of the things that makes it easy to use. You don't have to worry about types. It worries for you. There is a possibility of occasionally getting it wrong. We'll talk about that later, but does this make sense so far, sorta? You could also do, I'm going to declare a couple of, well, let's see, how do I want to do this? You could also declare, so I did number equals 7. I'm going to do number 2 equals 12. I don't know why. Notice also it's not worried about this space here. This is actually probably the better for readability, but it isn't going to worry about that spacing. White space generally, it does matter in Python, but yeah. Some white space matters in Python. I'll show you in a moment. Python doesn't use curly braces. Notice I don't have any semicolons either. So it just goes to the end of the statement to figure out where the line is. This is also in the interactive, right? I'm going to show you a different way to do this in a moment. So if I do sum equals number plus number 2, again, I'm having trouble typing. Okay, so that we've assigned to a new variable sum. It's actually in pink because you could use it as a it's a built-in function, but we're not using it that way. And then when I do print it comes up with 19, which is correct. All right. So we've seen variables now, right? I'm going to show you a different way to do these, which is the way we'll do most of these, and we'll talk a little bit about a couple of other things, including loops and things. But are there any questions more just on this part? This interactive mode is a real good way to test things. You know, when you're actually looking at whether something is accurate, whether an equation is correct or something, you can put it in this interactive mode and you can test it, see if it'll work or not. Okay, so but normally what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a file, new file. Okay, so we've got the interactive mode up here. But we've got this new file, and notice this one doesn't have the greater than signs. So this one isn't interactive. So what I'm going to do is I am going to actually create a function. For the most part, we're only going to use this function for a while. And I'm going to call it main. Main is the starting point of a program usually, right? It's the built-in starting point. Less so in Python than in other languages, but it's still logically sort of that. The def there means that we're defining it. We're defining a function. And then we have a colon. Colon means that what follows this is the definition of the function. And I'm going to what do we want to do in this function? Let's just say number 1 equals 7. Okay, number 2 equals 12. We'll just do exactly the same thing, except I didn't call it number 1 in the first one. Yeah.
So with the syntax as the spacing, where exactly does that matter?
Right here it matters. Notice how this is indented. Python determines what belongs to what by means of an indentation. So if I move these over to the edge of the line, this won't work.
I mean like with the equal signs and like the.
Oh, so these, it only matters if it can't figure out what's going on. And it can figure out what's going on here. This again might be more readable. But operators don't have to be spaced around. It usually figures those out. Operators being like equal signs, plus signs, etc. And then I'm going to do, I'm going to show you a variation of the print here. I'm going to print number 1 plus number 2. Okay. And then I need to call the main. So this is how you call a function, right? You just you name it, put parentheses there, no colon. Yeah.
How does it know where the method ends?
I go back to the edge. This is the weirdest thing about Python. Drove me nuts, still drives me nuts. Indentation matters, right? Indentation, it doesn't use semicolons. Most, like if you've done JavaScript or you've done Java or you've done a lot of other languages, they use a semicolon to mark the end of the statement. So it doesn't matter how you space it. It knows that it's at the end of a statement because of the semicolon. Python doesn't use any semicolons. So what it uses is indentation. This is against the margin. This is a root statement, and we're defining this method. These are indented, which means that they belong to this method. This comes back to the edge, so it no longer belongs to that method. Now, the environment will do this for you to some extent. When I put the colon here, right, when I press enter, notice my cursor is automatically indented here. So you just go with the indentation until you're done with the block. Now I could leave a white space here, that doesn't matter, right? But the spaces over here do matter. It's weird. It's a way that they get away from having to use semicolons.
Is there typical convention for where you put white spaces, or just does it vary from person to person?
It varies. The real key is readability. So it's not uncommon if you had a really complicated set of things going on inside of a method like this, that you might want to separate things. So these are the assignments of variable to variables, and this is where you're actually doing something. Notice I did do this a little different too. I did the actual calculation inside the print, which you can do. I just wanted to show you could do that. Another thing I want to show you is there's a couple of kinds of comments. So I'm going to do variables and assignments, and then I'll do a thing. Print results. All right, so those are comments, and they use the pound sign or the hash mark to specify the assignment. Those are single line assignments. I'm going to, up here, I'm going to do 3 single quotes. Oops, those are commas. And I'm just going to write a little comment. This is a Python program showing some basics. And one of the things we're going to do is we're going to put our names and dates on these with a header. This is a real common programming action. What is today? The 24th, 6th already? And then to close this, you do the 3 single quotes again. So this is a multi-line comment, and these are single line comments. And again, those are not what in most other languages, well, use different symbols for these. Python is atypical of other languages in a lot of ways. The concepts, the programming concepts are pretty much the same, but the language is fairly different. Perl uses pound signs for comments, but I don't know of any other language that does. And then these, I don't know of anybody that does that, but it works here. So, comments, questions on that? Let's run this. To run this, what I need to do is I have to save it. I'm going to save it to Documents. I think I'm actually going to make a new folder called Python files or something. And I'm going to, we'll call this first program or something. And then I'm going to save it. Okay. It puts a PI at the end of it, a .pi, and it makes, that's how it identifies it as a Python program. So if I do that, now I can run it. So I'm going to run it. I'm going to run the module. And notice it goes back over here and it prints out 19, right? Because that's what we told it to do, basically. Yeah.
Why do you call back to main at the end? Doesn't that just close it out?
What, the main here?
Yeah.
The main actually calls this. This won't run until it's called.
Oh.
And the reason you know it's called is it's over at the margin and it has the parentheses. It doesn't have that.
What's the hash?
There are comments.
Oh.
It's not a bad idea to comment. It's better to be over comment than to under comment. That being said, I'm terrible at it. You had a question? So yeah, I saved it. Doesn't matter where you save it to, but it doesn't automatically save if you have changes. You have to do save, yeah. Now, I can also, I'm going to open up another. So I'm just going to, let's do a new file. And then I'm going to File, Open. So I'm going to open, and I'll get the, oh, it was already there. Oh, I didn't put it in the folder. Oh, well. It made the new folder, but I didn't do it. So you can load this, load a file once you've saved it. And you can still run it. So if I run the module, it goes back here, and again, it writes out the answer. So the idea that it moves over to that interactive one to do the answer, that's idle, right? It's not, if you were doing it in Visual Studio Code, it would print it out in a console. Jupyter prints it out underneath the method. Where it prints is kind of up to what thing you're using. So let's make some difference things here. We've seen kind of how we're just assigning those numbers. Maybe you would want to have the reader be able to enter the numbers, the people using the program, so we could show a little bit of input. And then print is obviously the output. It's the default output, but it doesn't have to be the only way to output things, right? Print, though, is what most of our outputs will be. So yeah.
So the main method doesn't require a class?
It doesn't require what?
Class, like in Java?
No. So, how many have done Java? Just a couple. So I'm not sure how useful all of the examples, but no, it's not like Java. It is not a class-based, it's not an object-oriented language at root. It's more of a function-based language. So it's more like C or C++ in that you can just have functions in outer space and they just run when you call them. Which again, another thing that kind of drove me nuts initially.
Why does it not like the indents? Because I put indents in it and then it said unexpected indent.
Well, the indents have to be, so main has to be back at the margin. So you want to back up main all the way.
All of it's
Yeah. No, no, no. A common, I'm going to mention it because that's a real common thing. If you put main over here, right, if it's not if it's indented, then it becomes part of this function and it won't call anything. This function will never get called. It's weird, as I said, it's weird. You get used to it. But the indentation is how it determines what belongs to what. We'll look at, before we're done here, I'll show you a loop. And a loop is also a block, so it'll be another level of indentation. Okay, so I'm going to do a new program and we're going to do some inputs. I'm just going to close this because it's already up. In fact, is there a way to clear this? Nope. Nope. I'm used to doing it. I'm going to actually close it all out. I just wanted a clean slate, so I'm going to do idle again. Do you know why it's named idle? It's actually for Eric Idle. The people that did Python were big fans of Monty Python. And there's also, in the documentation, it can be annoying, but there are lots of hidden Python jokes, Monty Python jokes. All right, so I did this so I could do a new file. I'm not expecting all this to necessarily sink in right away either. If you've never programmed before, it takes a while, right? Programming is not something that you're born knowing how to do. It's not a natural, instinctual thing. Some people have better instincts for it than others, but it's usually because of background, because they've done, like in a computer science program, they usually require a lot of math. Not because you're necessarily going to use that math when you're programming, but because the logic patterns are similar. You know, just thinking about commands and roots and doing things in a certain sequence. So I'm going to do again, I will do first the comments. So what are we going to do here? This program will output some, I have no idea what I'm doing, some math based on user inputs. I think what we'll do is we'll do like a plus, minus, subtract, and divide. Okay, and then again, when we do these, it would be a good idea like to put your name, you just can't type today, and a date. It's just a good habit to get into. If you're working for a company and you're building objects in code for that company, typically they make you do a really long header telling exactly what's in that class, exactly what every method does, you know, so everything there. So 26, it's not 226, it's 926. 2019, okay, and then the three, when you're doing a block one, the three single quotes again. Now, a couple of things about this. I don't care if you ever use this as a comment. If you want, you can just do pound sign, pound sign, pound sign, pound sign. That's fine. You know, the pound sign also works. So I'm going to do a def main, and most of the time when we do programs, we will usually do the def main. Eventually, in a couple, 3-4 weeks, we will start doing multiple functions, not just def main, but several different functions. And at the end, we'll do objects. but it's not as object-oriented as Java, yeah.
So if we move def main over, will everything in that line then run?
So if you move def main over in this environment anyway, it just won't work. Right, so it has to be up against the margin. It's determining, so it's the relative indent, but it always works from the margin. As I said, it's a bit of a pain. If other languages, you can write them wherever. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some input. So if we're going to take in numbers, I'm going to say basically similar to what we did, except I'm going to say number 1 equals, and this is a little bit weird, but we do need to do eval input. Please enter a number. And I'm going to do like a colon. This colon, the one in the string, that's just what anything in the quotes is what they call a literal. It's not actually causing anything in the program. So this colon is just for looks, right? Now, there's the eval is because we're doing numbers. If I were just entering my name, I wouldn't need an eval, right? So let's enter the name too. I'm not sure what we'll do with that, but I'm going to say, oh, I hit the cap lock. Another thing for naming conventions, notice how I'm doing these all in lowercase? That's the naming convention, right? That's the normal naming conventions. If I was going to do, like if I wanted to say name of user, do you guys recognize this? First word is lowercase, all the other words start with an uppercase. It's called camel case. That's also how they conventionally name things. Spaces are not allowed in the names. You can use underscores, but spaces are not allowed. Does that make sense? And then you can use numbers, but it can't start with a number. It has to start with a letter. Yeah.
What's the difference in the program between a single quote and double quote?
There's no difference between single quotes and double quotes within the input or print statements. Or some languages there are. I mean, if you get into, I think JavaScript distinguishes between single and double quotes. So do Java. A lot of the languages do, but Python doesn't. I did double quotes there on purpose. I tend to use single quotes. Actually, let's don't do it. That isn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to do input. Enter your name. Okay, so when you're only entering, and again, I probably for looks, I'll show it when we run this, you'll see why. Should do that in a space so that it'll have it over here. I'm going to show you a couple variations of this, but this one doesn't require the eval because I'm not doing a number. Does that make sense? Later I'll show you, eval is actually not your best choice here, but that's what the book uses initially, so we'll do it. You could do enter, double, or give it a data type. Yeah.
Don't you need to close the bracket after eval?
I do indeed. And that is, oops, I just clicked out of idle. That's a common error, which I do a lot. You have to have the same number of closing parentheses as you have opening, right? I'm going to do number 2. And I'll do the eval again. I'm going to show you a variation of this later. And input needs a lower case I. Notice that it's not, what color would that be? It's not quite pink, it's more of a, oh well, doesn't matter. It wasn't a key word because it had a capital letter. And again, I want a space. Okay. The one thing about double and single quotes, if you start with a double quote, you need to end with a double quote. If you start with a single quote, you need to end with a single quote. Right. Questions on those? So these are, getting, I'll call it getting our input. Looking for the time. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do just a series of calculations, and then we'll print them, right? Yeah.
Does it matter if in the stream there's like a single quote one line and a double quote the next line and then a single quote?
It actually doesn't matter. So I could do a single quote here, and it would be perfectly fine. It does matter if you're like quoting inside of a quote. Does that make sense? So there are times when it doesn't matter whether you have the single quotes on the outside or the double quotes on the outside. But if you're doing quotes inside of quotes, you need to use the different one. If you use double quotes, then you use a single inside, and etc. I'm also going to show. Well, let's see. I think we're going to do a little bit more complicated print one too. So let's call this one, I'm just going to call it addition, equals number 1 plus number 2. So we've done this before, right? The plus sign is pretty obvious for the addition. Multiplication. So I'm going to do, I'll just call it mult, equals number 1 times number 2. So if you haven't done programming before, you might not have encountered that the asterisk is the multiplication symbol. Does anybody not? Everybody's seen that before as a multiplication. They don't use X because that gets confused. And they don't use just a parenthesis because they wouldn't figure out how to do that either. Computers aren't that smart. So the asterisk is the usual multiplication. Division. This is a little bit different than other programming languages too. There's a couple of different kinds of divisions. I'm going to do just number 1, number 2. This is normal division in the sense that it will return decimal parts even though the inputs are integers. Do you guys know the difference between integers and decimal? All right, so an integer has no decimal parts. In most languages, if this is an integer and this is an integer, then it will return an integer result, which means that it'll drop the decimal. But in Python, that is not the case. If you want integer division, and I think this is actually chapter 3, so we're ahead of ourselves. I'm not going to worry about it too much, but if you want int division, you do number 1, number 2. So you do a double slash, and then it'll drop the decimal parts. And if you want to see the decimal parts, you can do I'm going to call it remainder equals number 1 %, number 2. And then what it does is it doesn't give you the result of the division. It gives you any remainder. That's called the modulus. which you may not have seen before. These two are like your third grade. Actually, I don't know. I was in third grade in the 60s. It's been a while. But when I was in the third grade, you would do division and then you'd have a remainder, right? That's what these two do, is they give you the division and the remainder as opposed to giving you a decimal part. So, I'm going to print these out. I'm going to do it a little bit. So I'm going to print, and I'm going to say, I guess what I'll do is I'll say sum, and I'm going to do a comma, and I'm going to do addition. And we'll do that for all the others too. I'll do print product and comma malt and print division. So instead of division, that'd be quotient, right? And comma division. And let's see, I guess int division. So I don't know what you would call that.
For subtraction.
What?
For subtraction.
Oh, did I forget subtraction? Let's just do it after this. And it's just the hyphen or the subtract symbol. One of the things that's actually pretty useful to do, although I'm not sure it'll give us that much here, I often copy and paste. So this would be difference. The thing is, I'm changing more than I'm keeping, so I'm going to say integer. And do int division. Oh, I didn't close the double quote. Okay. And then the last one, the remainder. Actually, I will also do the name since we did that. So a couple of things about this. This is a lot more than I intended, actually. We're doing all the different math operators. Not all of them. There's actually a few more. And then we're printing them out. One of the things you can do is you can just put a comma. This is literal text, right? This is just going to print out what you type. This is going to bring out the result of that thing. And you can just do a comma to separate that from the text, and it'll put it into the print statement. Does that make sense? It's really easy. Later we'll talk about ways you can format it more. And you can also combine these. Like I could do sum, comma, addition, comma, quotes, difference, comma. You know, you can just string them all together if you wanted into a single print statement. I also wanted to print the name just because we added it. So I'm just going to print name of user. Okay, so let's do a main. And again, it has to come back out here. And what we'll do is we'll run this, and I'll show you how the input works, and then I'll do a little bit of adjustment with the input, and then I'll show you a loop, and then we'll be done. That'll give you enough to get started, you know, if you look at the chapters and stuff. And again, this is being recorded. I'll also try to post the code. Most of these days I'm not going to lecture unless I see a need, and if I do see a need, I'll put an announcement out there so you know to come. Basically, the lectures will be in the videos and in the book and a few other things. So there won't be too many days like this, but I wanted to get you started a little bit. All right, so I need to save this. So I will save as, and I'll go to Documents. This one I actually will put in the Python Files folder. Anybody? I'll just say Math Operators, and it'll put a pi on there. Okay, and then I will run it. Okay, and I'll run the module, and notice it asked me to enter my name because we told it to do that. That's what the input does. And then it's going to ask me to enter a number. Anybody have a good number? What? 3? Okay. So let's do the second number for subtraction. I mean, it'll come out negative numbers if we do larger. Let's just do 2. Ah, it didn't like something. Number is not defined. Right? Because I added this later and it's number 1. So one of the things, I'm not unhappy that I had an error there because I want you can kind of look at these and it give you an idea of what's going wrong. Then you can fix it, you can save, and then we can try running it again. So I'm going to run, and this time I will again run the module. F5 also works if you don't like to go up to the menus. So I'll do Steve again, although it could be a different name. So we said 3, 2. Now it has another error. Addition is not defined. Did I not define addition? I spelled it wrong. So I'm going to Control S. So I'll try to run it. Can I get down there? This is why I did 32 instead of 3. So let's do 7. Now it worked. So I did the sum is 39, difference is 25, the product is 224. Notice that the initial division gives me a whole bunch of decimals. Then the integer only gives me 4. It drops all of that. And then the remainder is 4. So it actually rounds this. I don't know how it rounds it to 0.5. Anyway, it returns a rounded number for the integer. Actually, a good idea with these is to run it with numbers that you can calculate quickly in your head to see if it's accurate. But it did work at the end. And it's not uncommon for me or anybody to have a few errors. And that can be, kind of frustrating at times, especially when you run it 4 or 5 times and each time there's some little error. But it's not uncommon. And 90% of your errors will probably be typos. Some of them times it's indents, but a lot of times it's just that you spelled something differently here than you spelled it down here. Right? They have to match, and they have to match in case too. Yeah.
Can I name something else? Can I name the method something else?
Name which?
The method?
Yes, you can. As I said, unlike, say, Java, if I were to name this, so just as a test case, let's call this I'm going to call it math operators. And then down here I would have to call math operators. Did I spell them the same? No. All right, so if I save that and run it, it works just the same. So in Java, in C#, in C++, main is always the starting point. Here it's whatever you call first. But we usually name it main because that's, I mean, all the other languages it's main. Now, when you do an eval here, if I were to do the number 2, I mean, if I were to write the word 2, it would fail because I said eval, which means it's looking for a number. Right? So you can get an error from doing entry like that too, getting the wrong enter in there. I'm going to just real quickly go back. I want to show you 2 more things and then we'll call it good. Okay. And then I'll do the roster too. I haven't read the roster yet to see who's here. And I'll do that in just a few moments. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to do number 1, number 2, and I'm going to get rid of this. And I'm going to say, please enter 2 numbers divided with a comma. So, not a comma, a comma. So you can declare more than one variable on a line. Does that make sense? I just did number 1, number 2, and then I'm going to say, please enter 2 numbers divided with a comma. So I'm going to save that and run it real quickly. So, it works here. So I'm going to do Steve again. Can I lift that up anyway? I'm trying to get it so I can put that up. I want to get it up so you can read it better. All right. So I'm going to enter 2 numbers. I'm going to enter, we originally were going to do 3, 2, and notice it did everything just fine. So if you don't want to list your variables, a separate listing for each line, you can put them all on the same line divided by commas, and then you basically have to assign them by commas. After the commas. Does that make sense? There's a couple of other things. The only other thing I want to do right now, though, is just show a loop. And then there's a couple of other things that are in there that you can look up. So I'm going to do a new one of these. And I'm going to just call it def main. I'm not going to comment it right now, although I should. I'm going to have an input where you input a number or a word. What do you want, word or number? Doesn't matter. I'm just going to loop through. What? Okay. So let's say word equals, and then we'll do input. Enter, that needs quotes. No colon there. So I am going to do for, see if I can remember, because this is really different. For I in range 10. So, this is for repetition. And notice a couple of things. One is This is a new block, and you can always start a block, always has a colon. So a for loop, this is what is called a fixed loop or a for loop. It's going to print this 10 times, right? There's a lot of variations of this, by the way. And the I is just a random variable, like integer counter. You can name it whatever you want it. You could also print I. Let's do, I'm going to do print I comma word, and it'll print the numbers with the words, because I is essentially a counter. So then I'm going to call main, and to call main I have to go all the way over to the edge. Okay, so this block means that the code inside of this thing is indented even more, right? It's indented again. That's how it tells what belongs to what. So in the for loop, this line belongs to the for loop, so it's indented. There's a colon here to say that the object starts. Just like there's a colon here to say that the method starts. So I'm going to do save. I'm going to call it LoopPy, and we will run it. So I'm going to run the module. So I'm going to enter a word. I didn't leave myself a space. I'm going to just say word. And notice how it prints down the word 10 times. And I also put the I in there, which is a counter. It actually only went to 9 because it started counting at 0. So that's one of the things that computers are really good at is doing the same thing over and over again. Things that would drive people crazy. Yeah.
Can you switch back to the
Yeah.
the screen?
So the for is a keyword. I is just whatever you want to say it is. I mean, I is a real traditional variable. It's just a variable. But what it is standing for is a counter, right? Because a for loop is a counted loop. It has a certain number of loops. This is different syntax than, say, JavaScript, but it's the same principle. This is, we just put a number in here. It could be a variable that you put in there. And you can also do things like you can do a start and end number. And you can also do a minus if you want to count backwards, things like that. I'm not going to do all those things now. I just want to say there's a lot of variations of the loop. What all we're doing in here is we're printing the counter, 0 through 9, 10 of them, and we're printing word 10 times. We're just printing, I entered a word, I said word, and so it just printed word 10 times. Does that make sense? Again, computers are really good at doing things over and over again. And you'd be surprised how often in a program you need to just go through something over and over and over again. Sometimes it can be a calculation that you want to do over and over again. Like in the book, it has compound interest or interest statement, I think it says future value. But basically what you're doing is you're just saying how many years you want to go and then recalculating the interest for each year. And it's the same equation, you're just doing it over and over again. But the counter could change, right? So the year changes and the value changes as it goes through. And you can accumulate values while you go over and over again too, right? You can look at the book for that, and I'll help you with that. So, just as a quick summary of this, we didn't cover everything that's in chapters 1 and 2, but you could look at those. I will save the video and post it, and I'm also will post the code for what I've got here. So I'll post the loop and the math and the other one, which is I saved. I'll put them in the blog. If you go to the syllabus, so you go to the syllabus, at the top there are links to the YouTube videos and then to the blog. Now, right now, the blog is there from last time I taught this. And it moves in reverse time. So this is what we were doing at the end of the quarter, right? So if you wanted to go down, I will post our stuff there for today there. But if you go down, you'll see things that we did, you know, examples from previous quarters. And then other resources, I'm not entirely sure what I did for other resources. Oh, these are, actually most of those probably I should get out of there because those are all C# stuff. Ignore that one. Yeah.
So the eval command, what exactly?
So the eval, when you're doing an input, so when you're entering just a characters, you don't need the eval. What the eval does is it looks at your input and says, can I turn that into a number? So when you're entering numbers, particularly when you're entering numbers that you want to do calculations with, you have to let it, basically it goes through and it resolves whether or not it's a valid number or not. It's because of the eval that when I wrote the TWO, it failed because it knows that TWO is not a number, right? It's the word for a number, but it's not the number. The eval will look, if I put in 5 in here, it'll look at that and says, yes, 5 is a legitimate number, I can use that. Does that make sense? Part of it is the computer doesn't necessarily know whether you want to, if you just did a enter a number with the input, you could, but it wouldn't treat it as a number, it would treat it as a character. And you couldn't do any calculations with it. This is what you get when you're loosely typed. So in a lot of languages, when you declare a variable, you have to say exactly what kind of variable it is. You have to say it's a number. You have to say if it's a character. You have to say if it's an array or what that. In Python, it just figures it out on the fly, but it needs a few clues along the way, like that eval, you know, and some others. Okay, other questions? Let me real quickly, does anybody object to me putting up people, the roster?
Are you going to record it?
What?
Are you going to record it?
I could quit the recording now if you want.